G'day guys. A few of you might be new to this channel or new since I've last run this style of video. If this is one of the first times watching my videos, my name is Dean and I'm currently on Lake Awoonga. Chasing barramundi is one of my favourite things to do, and helping you guys catch barramundi is probably on par with one of my favourite things to do. So what I've done in the past is ran a series of videos and with that I try and run through the simplest of things that will help you to, I guess, a place to start, you know, a place to start with tackle, a place to start with lures, like locations, how I look for fish, find fish, all those sorts of things. So being the start of the series, the start of this year's Barra Basics videos, I'll run through my tackle. I won't go in depth with my lures because the rigging of them is not so much complicated, but there's a lot to it. So that will come up in the second Barra Basics videos. But for this video, a lot has changed over the past sort of 12 months or even 2 years possibly since I did the last Barra Basics videos. So I'll run through all that tackle and hopefully get that done before the sun sets, because then I want to move back up the lake and go and chase some barra. Before we jump in to this basics video, running through all my tackle, I have something very important to mention to you guys. I get a lot of questions about, can you come fishing with me? Now the wind decides to blow flat out. Hopefully that wind isn't affecting you too much. I get a lot of people asking me, can they come fishing with me? And unfortunately, I typically just say no, because of, it's one thing to take you guys, but then something happens, I'm not covered, you're not covered, and accidents do happen, so it's not worth the risk. But in saying that, I have good news. I've recently completed my coxswain's ticket and I will be guiding on the lake with Gladstone Fly and Sports Fishing. And I'm also going to be doing some, not so much guiding, but on the water classes. So I will set up some stuff for you guys for courses, and then I'll run a single day course on the water with me. So that will enable you to put everything into practice that you have learnt through theory, and you'll have someone with you, aka myself, to coach you and just to fine tune and make sure you fully understand what you need to learn. So keep an eye out for that. And I'm pretty excited about it actually, to teach you guys and to take some of you fishing. So let's get back to running through the tackle.
Oh my God. Oh my.
So essentially I'm going to be running 3 different combos this season. My probably go-to one will be when I'm throwing the Molix Shad 140, that big fella there. So the reel I'm going to be running on this combo is a Curado 300 HG. I always like the higher geared reels because I can slow down, whereas when these fish are playing up like they do, it's very, very hard to pick up slack line when you have a lower geared ratio reel. And what I do, you will notice, to assist with that is I run a big single power handle. A couple of reasons for that. So one, that power handle enables me to slow down. So how it does that is by that longer arm and single handle, the revolution or the time it takes me or the distance it takes me to do that one revolution, that is what slows me down. Whereas if I have those little handles and shorter arm, obviously then my revolution or the total circumference or whatever of my rotation of one turn is a lot quicker to do. Now that slows me down. And I really like the power and the feel of having that big power handle when you're fighting a big fish. I don't like having that little grip, but in saying that, I still fish that paddle, the small paddles on my other reels, but when it comes to my main go-to, bigger bait, bigger setup, I'm going to run that single big power handle. The reason for 300 over 200 is the consistency of retrieval of your lure with your line. So if you have a smaller reel, not so much a 200, depends on the size of the spool, but if you step down to like a 150 or even some 200 models, when you do a big cast with like 50-pound line, at the start of your retrieve, your spool is relatively smaller. So you have to then pick up, when you need to pick up the most line the fastest, it's going to be therefore the hardest because your spool is smaller. So each crank, you're not returning as much line as you are on a full spool. So hence the 300s. The rod is a Loomis IMX Pro 904 swimbait rod. This thing has been brilliant for me, 7'6". I much prefer swimbait rods for barramundi over everything. I'm fairly tall, so I can get away with it. I have got a little bit shorter one for my X-Pride for a different scenario, but with the bigger baits, so much easier just to cast them out with a swimbait rod, because that's what they're designed for. Setting the hook is also a lot better because you can pick up so much slack in movement on your line, as well as fighting a fish around the boat. I feel like I have a lot more control with that longer rod, keeping it away from the boat and steering that fish. There's other things too, like fishing a heavier bait into the weed. I have more power to rip that bait out of that weed. And if I'm fishing a crosswind and I have a big belly in my line, which I don't like doing, but in some scenarios you can't avoid it. When you have a longer rod, you imagine the purchase or the amount of line you can move with a close to 8-foot rod versus like a 6.6 or something. Like, you have so much more power and efficiency to pick up all that slack line and not drop any fish. The other side of it too, when a fish jumps and attempts to throw your bait, think about the longer rod as well, more curve, more distance for that rod before it will go straight, and allow that line to go slack and the fish to throw the hook. So I feel like a swim bait rod is a good scenario for experienced fishers and even better scenario for the inexperienced guys. My braid these days is the Grappler 8, so that's PE3. I just like to stick with PE sizes, so I've used PE3 for a lot of years, and regardless of what breaking strain that now goes up to, I will still stick with PE3. So PE3 now, I think in this, is like 57, 58 pound, which seems, it's not really excessive when these fish are probably nearly pushing that, some of the bigger models, but it seems heavy. People like to run a 30 pound braid, but PE3 is essentially what old school 30 pound was. So think about it that way. Think about it as your diameters. So when you're looking at different brands and you go, oh, I don't want to run 50 pound and that is so thick, check the diameter. Maybe it's like a PE4 braid already. So just get down to a PE3. PE3 line is relatively thin, and that gives you the benefit as well of cutting through the weed if a fish does tend to bury you. Whereas if you run a 50 pound in a lesser class line and it's really thick, you really struggle to cut through that weed, and it's going to be a mission to drag that fish out. Leader has also changed. The FC100 that I've used for so long is no longer. So the last, basically this whole season, I have been running the new FC system shock leader. Have not been chafed off, and I never got chafed off on FC100 either. So I'm very confident in recommending running the new leader, and I assume with most things, as technology improves and they take away one line, they bring out a new one, they don't bring it out because it's worse. So that has been very good so far. I've had a few trips where the lures weren't completely engulfed, but they were in their mouth with zero chafage. I only run 60. And I've had a few where they've been fully engulfed and they've been long fights through the weeds, through everything, and they've been chafed, but the fish stayed on, which is exactly what you want. One of the main reasons to run 60 pound is I don't like running 80. The thicker the line, the more it affects your lure, and the more it affects the sink rate of your lure and the way your lure reacts in the water. So heavy leader, yes, fluorocarbon sinks, but you got to think of the diameter versus it into the water and what the stiffness of that, what it can do to affect the roll and the wobble of your bait. So 60 has just been my go-to for a long time. And if you watch my saltwater channel, I recently caught like a 137 plus barramundi in the salt on that 60 pound leader. So I will confidently tell you guys 60 is enough. So with this combo, that is going to be my go-to with the 140 Shad, which is what you'll see in my hands majority of the time. I have two of them. One when I'm going to run like that rattle bait like that one, and the other one for running something more subtle, but still both 140 Shads. I can't show you the bait on this rod because it is a prototype that is not out yet. But this is the combo typically I allow Elena to use. Shouldn't say allow, typically Elena uses this. But I do like running this combo when I want to run a spin, and particularly when I'm running this prototype. I'll also run this combo for throwing the 120 Shads as well, just a little bit lighter. But this confidently throws a 140 Shad as well. The rod is a Zodius 274 extra heavy. So it says it's capable of casting lures up to 42 grams, but I throw the 140 Shad on it, so does Elena plenty of times. This rod is a beast. So it's 7'4" extra heavy. I use this in the salt a lot for coral trout and those sorts of things, even caught big Chinamen and stuff like that on it. It is a beast rod. The reel is a 5000 sustain. Very, very nice reel. The reason I went to 5000 is the drag and that lovely handle there. This has something like 13 kilos of drag in this spin reel. So if you're not a bait caster user, this is the combo that I recommend for you. The Zodius 7.4 extra heavy and the Sustain 5000. So similarly with my other combo, it's the same braid, same leader. The only thing I will mention with spinning tackle, with my bait caster tackle, I run a 7 or 8 foot leader, just so when I'm retrieving that, because you're pointing the bait caster at the water, that leader knot slides in nice and neatly. When I run a spinning rod, I hate bringing my leader knot in through that top runner because of the angle and everything that you're on. So I only run a short leader, say 3 foot, that keeps the leader knot outside of my rod, and I don't end up jamming the FG into the rod tip all the time. Also allows you to cast a lot further because you don't end up with that spiraling loop when people put their FG knot onto their spool. So that is combo number 2. Sustain 5000, Zodius 274 extra heavy. It is a beast of a spin rod. That spinning tackle combo will also be my frogging combo, topwater combo later in the year when things really heat up. The final combination I will be using this season is the Curado DC 200 HG. And like a lot of people, I just love the noise from these reels. It is incredible and the castability is amazing. That just never gets old for me. So the reason I'm running this is a 172 heavy. So as the name suggests, it is a 7'2" one piece and it's a heavy rod. This will be my jerkbaiting rod. This is also for my 120 shads, the little fellas, because I can just cast this a mile and I love that noise. The power handles on this, actually pretty big, and the arm is pretty nice, but this as well is a high-speed reel. So what I've found recently with my 120s is I do a lot of popping in the weed and a lot of faster retrieves because I'm using the 120 because I'm staying above all that mess when I can't fish my 140. So having that higher speed Curado, that really keeps me, it enables me to have full control over that bait at all times. And when you do get a hit, especially on top of that weed, they are boosting it out of there at you because they want to be back in the deep water. So that enables you to keep up with them pretty well. That X Pride is super crisp. And with that monocoque butt, similarly with the Zodius, if you haven't had a hit on a monocoque butt before, you need to do yourself a favor and do it. The sensitivity in that thing is insane. You can feel everything. Like when I swim that 120 shad, it literally feels like you're swimming some sort of diver. The vibration is so strong. And the hit, nothing short of evil. That's what I was using. I was running the X Prides and the monocoque for my cod season, and the hit from them is brutal and so much fun. So same thing, all my reels are going to be running that PE3 line, 60-pound leader. Even when I run jerkbait, it's going to be running 60. I may go back to 40 if I feel like I'm playing with smaller fish in places like Mondrian, but majority of the time it's going to be 60-pound in PE3, which is basically 60-60. So that's easy for you guys to remember. The big single handles on the 300 Curados are a Shimano product as well, so you can easily grab them. There's plenty of other companies that make single handles as well that are nice and fancy. It is one of the handles that they run on the Tranks, but that on my Curado 300, I'm going to keep all Curados for Barra, leave on my Tranks for the cod. That is an ideal combo for me. I like the bigger reels and the bigger handles. Well, basically as far as basics go, barramundi basics, that is my tackle for this season. So if you have any questions about it, then feel free to write them in the comments and I will get back to you. You can also DM me on any of my socials if you have any questions, but I will endeavour to run through lures, bite times, where to look, how to find them, all those things in the next lot of videos. But until then, I really appreciate you guys tuning in and I'll see you all in the next one.